Welcome back. In this session, we will talk about the waste hierarchy and waste prevention. After this session, you should be able to understand the waste hierarchy and waste prevention theory, distinguish the 7 R principles, understand the importance and challenges of behavior change, and identify main factors influencing behavior change. According to the data from the World Counts, every year we dump a massive 2.12 billion tons of waste. If all this waste was put on trucks, they would go around the world 24 times. Something that is even more frightening is that 99% of the things we buy are trashed within 6 months. From these numbers, you can agree that the best way to manage waste is to not produce it in the first place. That is when waste prevention comes into play. But before we get into waste prevention, we must be familiar with the waste hierarchy. The waste hierarchy provides a generalized priority order for waste management options and technical approaches. Here is the waste hierarchy as presented in the Global Waste Management Outlook. The first important element implies preventing waste. Then comes minimization, reuse, recycling, other recovery, landfill, and controlled disposal. Even if prevention can be understood in many ways, fundamentally, 2 aspects can be distinguished: quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative prevention are measures aiming at reducing the quantities of substances, materials, and products that become waste. Qualitative prevention measures, on the other hand, seek to reduce or eliminate use of specific hazardous substances in materials and products that become waste. Waste can be prevented at almost any point along the life cycle of a product, from the production stage, going from the extraction of a raw material to its processing and manufacturing of a product, further into packaging, distributing, and retail, to the use stage and the end-of-use stage. We then talk about sustainable production, sustainable consumption, and waste management. At each of these stages, waste prevention policies and specific instruments can be used to target the specific key stakeholders involved, which are typically manufacturer and importers for the production stage, distributor and retailer for both transport and purchase stages, consumers for the consumption and end-of-use stages, and the local authority or waste company for the collection stage. Examples of qualitative and quantitative prevention for each step are shown here. A quantitative prevention measure at the production stage could be designing the product for repair, reuse, and disassembly. At the purchase stage, it could be promoting eco-labels. At the user or consumption stage, a qualitative prevention could be the so-called green purchasing of choices by citizens, or the quantitative prevention of avoiding food waste. And once the product is consumed, then segregation at source would be a qualitative prevention measure, ensuring a better quality of the different waste fraction. Now let's have a closer look at the waste prevention from the consumer side. Waste prevention measures at the consumer side can be summarized with the 7 R principles, which ask consumers to not only reconsider their own consumption, but also refuse. Do not consume what you do not need. Reduce consumption of energy and materials, buy goods that last long, minimize packaging, etc. Reuse, share with others what you have or find new uses for an old object. Repair, fix or upgrade your object instead of throwing it away. Regift, give someone else a gift that you previously received. Recover energy and material, by doing composting for example. Recycle, close the loop, and make something new again. If you are interested in knowing what kind of measures can be implemented or promoted at a city level for waste prevention following the 7 R principles, you can have a look at the Waste Prevention Program of the City of Graz, available in the list of key readings. On the paper, following the 7 R principles seems quite straightforward. However, asking people to rethink their consumption habits and follow the 7 R principles is in reality asking them to change their behavior. And changing a behavior has never been an easy thing to achieve. Let's go through examples of plastic waste reduction. Campaigns about plastic waste reduction have been going on worldwide, conveying different messages such as showing some alarming facts about how soon we will have more plastic in the oceans than fish, or telling us that plastics are a weapon of mass destruction, and even that what goes in the ocean gets into our bodies. To understand why certain campaigns are more effective than others, it is important to have a closer look at what drives behavior change, and how it can be incentivized. When doing any type of campaign, we have the common tendency to focus on the why it is important to do a certain thing, and how to do it, like in this picture. In the case of waste prevention, the why can be to reduce our waste production, and therefore to protect our environment, and the how could be, for example, by saying no to plastic bottles. But the why and how are not the only questions these women have in mind while listening. In this case, they could also ask themselves, am I at risk? And why? Can it really affect my health to produce plastic waste? What are the costs or the benefits? Is it worth it to not use plastic bottles anymore? What will the others say? Will they say that I am losing my time trying to find alternatives, or will they be proud of me? Can I do it? Do I have other options at home to not have to use plastic bottles? How can I manage it? Will I have enough time to look for refill stations? Do I actually like to drink in a refill bottle? All these questions, from a psychological perspective, are linked to specific behavioral factors. Based on the RANAS psychological approach developed at EWAG, each of these questions can be associated to different factors. Risk: person's understanding and awareness of the health risk. Attitude: person's positive or negative position towards behavior. Norm: perceived social pressure towards a behavior. Ability: person's confidence in her or his ability to practice a behavior. Self-regulation: person's attempts to plan and self-monitor a behavior, and to manage barriers and conflicting goals. These factors, taking into account social, psychological, and economic aspects, are the drivers of a behavior. They will lead to certain beliefs, and will influence a person's intention to have a certain behavior, to use a device, or to even form a habit. Now, if we want to achieve a behavior change, we can use different behavior change techniques in order to influence these factors. If we want to trigger the risk factor, we can spread information, present facts about personal risk, and arouse fear on how not well-managed waste can affect your health, for example. If we want to trigger the attitude factor, we can reward people, highlighting the cost and benefit of not using single-use plastic bags anymore, for example. If we want to trigger the norm factor, we can use role models, being TV stars or an iconic local person, showing their commitment towards a certain behavior, and asking people to do the same. For the ability factor, we can provide instruction and infrastructure or equipment, for example, a refill bottle, and explain where to refill it and how to clean it. For self-regulations factors, we can help people defining a planning. Of course, when defining behavior change strategies, it is always very important to consider the social context, a culture, traditions, laws and policies, the physical context and natural environment and seasonality, and the personal context of sex, age, etc. If you are interested in knowing more about the RANAS psychological factors and approach, and how you can use a systematic approach to define which factor should be targeted in your specific context, you can find all the relevant information in the following website. We have reached the end of this session. Let's summarize what we have seen in this lesson. We started with the waste hierarchy, and its very first step, waste prevention, divided into two types of measures, qualitative and quantitative. We also saw that waste prevention is possible at each and every stage of the life cycle of a product, from manufacturing to consumption and end of use. We looked at the consumer waste prevention aspect with the 7 R principles of rethinking our consumption, by refusing, reducing, reusing, repairing, regifting, recovering and recycling. We also saw that by adopting these 7 R principles or asking others to adopt them, we are actually asking for a behavior change, and that, when defining a waste prevention campaign, it would be therefore important to have a closer look at which psychological factors, such as risk, attitude, norm, ability, and self-regulation, you should target when planning interventions. As always, do not forget to go through additional resources of the course. Thank you for your attention. See you soon.